You know what's strange? Some of the most perceptive, emotionally intelligent people you'll ever meet didn't develop those abilities through books, classrooms, or years of meditation. They developed them because, at some point in their lives, they had to. Their nervous system was trained not by choice, but by circumstances that required them to read rooms, predict moods, and think several steps ahead just to feel safe. Psychologists have started calling this traumatic intelligence, and if you've never heard of it before, that's exactly why this video matters. Here's the psychological premise. Trauma doesn't only wound people. In many cases, it also sharpens them. Research in developmental psychology suggests that children who grow up in unpredictable or emotionally complex environments often develop a heightened sensitivity to social cues, emotional patterns, and nonverbal communication. Their brains, specifically the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, are wired early on to detect subtle signals that most people completely miss. The result is a form of intelligence that looks almost invisible from the outside, but runs incredibly deep on the inside. The first sign is that you can read a room before anyone says a word. You walk into a space and something shifts in you, a quiet alertness. You pick up on tension in someone's posture or a micro-expression that crosses a person's face for less than a second. This isn't intuition in the mystical sense. It's pattern recognition. Your brain was trained from an early age to scan your environment for emotional data because, at some point, that scanning kept you safe. The second sign is that you are deeply attuned to other people's needs, sometimes before they are. You notice when someone is struggling, even when they say they're fine. You sense the shift in someone's energy before they've had a chance to process it themselves. Psychologists refer to this as hyper-empathy, and it often develops in people who grew up needing to track the emotional states of caregivers or family members closely. You learned to feel others because your environment required it. Third, you are an exceptional problem solver, especially under pressure. When things fall apart around you, something in you goes calm and strategic. You don't freeze, you adapt. This is the nervous system doing something fascinating. Individuals who experienced early adversity often develop what researchers describe as stress inoculation, meaning their brains are better calibrated to manage high-stakes situations, because high-stakes situations were simply their normal. The fourth sign is that you think deeply about human behavior, almost compulsively. You analyze why people do what they do. You replay conversations. You search for the meaning behind actions that others don't even register. This depth of psychological thinking isn't random. It was forged by years of trying to understand the unpredictable behavior of people around you. You became a student of human nature because understanding people felt essential to your well-being. Sign 5. Consider this for a moment. Everything you've heard so far, the perceptiveness, the empathy, the analytical mind, these are not weaknesses dressed up as strengths. They are genuine cognitive and emotional adaptations. And they tell a story about how remarkably responsive the human brain is to experience. So let's continue, because the remaining signs reveal something even more interesting about how traumatic intelligence shapes identity. The sixth sign is that you have a highly developed sense of self-reliance. You don't wait for people to rescue you. You build solutions, independently and quietly. This self-sufficiency often surprises people who know you, but it makes complete sense developmentally. When the environment in childhood wasn't reliably supportive, the brain learned to internalize resourcefulness. Dependence felt risky, so competence became the default. Seventh, you feel things more intensely than the people around you seem to. Music hits differently. Injustice bothers you on a visceral level. A kind gesture from a stranger can genuinely move you. This emotional depth is a hallmark of traumatic intelligence. The amygdala, which processes emotional experience, becomes highly sensitized through repeated emotional activation in early life. The result is a person who doesn't just observe the world, they feel it at a frequency most people don't have access to. The eighth sign is that you struggle to trust easily, but when you do trust, it's profound. Your threshold for trust is simply higher than average. This isn't cynicism, it's a calibrated response. Cognitive psychologists call this adaptive skepticism. Your brain learned early that not all signals of safety were genuine, so it built filters. And those filters, while sometimes isolating, also mean that the connections you do form tend to be honest, meaningful, and unusually resilient. Ninth, you have a complex relationship with rest and stillness. Slowing down can feel uncomfortable, almost unsafe. When things are quiet, the mind tends to wander inward, and not always gently. This is the nervous system doing what it was conditioned to do: stay alert. The irony is that the very intelligence trauma built requires active effort to unwind. Learning to rest, for someone with traumatic intelligence, is itself a kind of reclaiming. It's telling the brain that the threat has passed. And the 10th sign, perhaps the most defining one, is that you carry a quiet but unshakable sense of meaning. You don't move through life casually. You've looked closely at pain, both your own and others, and something in you has refused to let it be meaningless. Research on post-traumatic growth, a concept studied extensively by psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, suggests that a significant portion of people who navigate adversity emerge with a deeper philosophical clarity about what matters and why. You are, in many ways, someone who learned wisdom earlier than most. Here's what's worth sitting with. Traumatic intelligence isn't something to celebrate at the expense of acknowledging the difficulty that created it. The sharpness was real, but so was the cost. What psychology invites us to understand is that the human brain is not simply damaged by hardship. It is also, in very specific and measurable ways, transformed by it. The perceptiveness you carry, the empathy you extend, the way you analyze the world, these are not coincidences. They are the architecture of a mind that had to grow quickly, and did. The question now isn't how you got here. The question is what you choose to do with the intelligence you built along the way.